Good morning. This is Howard Riell from the Real Truth Radio Show. A couple of weeks ago, I brought this book into shul, Knowing God's Plan by Rabbi Moshe Chaim Luzzatto. Very deep stuff, and several people came over and took it off my desk and looked at it, read through it, asked me about it. So I gave a talk yesterday during Shalosh Shudas about this book, and I told my friends in shul that for Torah Jews who are looking to understand God's plan, to know why God created the universe, what our role in it, and what we're expected to do, and what's the meaning of life, I think the place to begin that search is with professional wrestling. Here's what I told them. Go back to 1986. King Kong Bundy, 450 pounds of angry, enters the World Wrestling Federation, and he cuts a wide swath. He begins destroying opponents, not only pinning them for a 3 count, but insisting that the referee count to 5. He destroys Randy Macho Man Savage. He brutalizes Hacksaw Jim Duggan. He roughs up Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. He cuts a swath, and people in the World Wrestling Federation started asking, is this the beginning of a takeover? Are we being conquered by the evil of King Kong Bundy? Well, the only obstacle in his path to complete domination was World Wrestling Federation champion Hulk Hogan. Hogan was giving an interview on TV. Bundy came up behind him and hit him with a steel chair, blood everywhere, and the fans thought, my God, evil is conquering the World Wrestling Federation. Can no one stop him? It can only be settled at WrestleMania, or WrestleMania 2. Not only settled at WrestleMania, but inside a 20-foot steel cage. The ultimate battle of good versus evil. The match took place. King Kong Bundy began strong. He dominated Hulk Hogan. Apparently, evil was about to conquer, about to claim the day. But suddenly, Hulk Hogan came back. And he hurt King Kong Bundy and dropped him to his knee. Bundy climbed the fence in the hopes of getting out of the cage and winning the match. Hogan dragged him down off the cage, beat him, climbed up the cage, went out. The bell rang, the fans cheered. Hulk Hogan had retained his World Wrestling Federation Championship. He held up his gold championship belt because good had triumphed over evil. That's basically what Rabbi Luzzatto is writing about. For example, here are some excerpts from his book. He writes, since God wanted to reveal his absolute oneness, which can only be defined by negating evil, it was necessary to create evil and then to show that it has no independent existence or power whatsoever. Only in this way is every aspect of God's absolute oneness clearly revealed. In other words, King Kong Bundy had to destroy all the competition he went up against in order to set up this ultimate match of good versus evil. Rabbi Luzzatto continues, God did not want to cause his presence to eliminate the world right away, making it perfect from the very beginning. In other words, if King Kong Bundy had lost a few matches here and there, nobody would have cared about him. God is the only one who allows evil to do everything it possibly can. In the end, the more evil inflicts its burden of suffering upon the world, the greater will be the revelation of God's total oneness and of his absolute and unlimited power over everything that exists. So the more formidable King Kong Bundy is, the greater Hulk Hogan will appear to be. Rabbi Luzzatto continues, therefore, God must reveal to them what they were unable to grasp through their own knowledge. He does this by hiding his presence more and more until evil predominates in the world to the ultimate extent, just as we see now in our present exile. This is what our sages referred to when they said in Tractate Sota, there is no day whose curse is not greater than the previous one. But in the end, the one master will suddenly enter his palace and his glory will be revealed before the entire world. In other words, at WrestleMania, Hulk Hogan will prevail. The rabbi continues, God allows the world to be engulfed in darkness and suffering. This does not mean that he's abandoned the world. In fact, from amidst the darkness, salvation will spring forth. Hulk Hogan will win. The greater the darkness, the greater the eventual revelation of God's oneness will be. And you should have heard the fans screaming when Hogan made it over that cage. In order for God's oneness to be fully revealed, all evil will eventually be destroyed, and the world will reach a state of perfection. That's Hogan raising the belt over his head. The existence of evil is caused by the concealment of God's presence. When the time comes for evil to be destroyed, God will remove his concealment and reveal his presence. We just got through the holiday of Purim. The Jews were engulfed with evil. The powers that be, Haman, King Ahasuerus, were just one step away from wiping out, literally, God forbid, the Jewish people. But at the climactic moment, the Jews turned things around and they prevailed. They raised their championship belts over their heads. When the Jews were pinned against the shore of the Red Sea and the chariots of Pharaoh were bearing down on them, it was like King Kong Bundy about to go for the final pin. At the climactic moment, the Jews turned defeat into victory and glorified God. There are many other examples about this. The Jews were at the 49th level of impurity while they were slaves in Egypt. One more level, the rabbis teach us, and they would have been wiped out forever. But at the last minute, they staged a comeback, and they retained, so to speak, their heavyweight championship. This is how God runs the world. This is the scenario that he repeats again and again and again to magnify his greatness and show us that God is God, the only God. Art sometimes imitates life, and everything in the world is reflective of God's will, as Rabbi Victor Miller writes. He says the following: Hashem looked into the Torah and created the world. The Torah was the blueprint for the universe. According to this teaching, everything in the universe has some counterpart in the Torah, which means everything in the universe either is symbolic of the Torah or is connected in a spiritual way with something in the Torah. And so, there are two lessons to take away. Number one, we see how God runs the world. It's always darkest before the dawn. But when it's a battle between good and evil, it will appear that evil is winning, but that's only temporary. And it's important for us to remember that when we see a world awash in Islamic terrorism. We see anti-Semitism on the rise. We see countries like North Korea and Iran either developing or showing off their nuclear arsenals, weapons of mass destruction spreading throughout the world, economic crisis on the horizon. It is the darkness before the dawn, and we have to know that there will be a dawn, and that dawn will signify that Hashem runs the universe, and he always emerges as the victor. Number two, on a much more personal level, what Rabbi Miller says is true. Everything in life, every mundane activity, from our children, to our spouses, to our health, to business, to the song you listen to when you turn on the radio, the song that's playing, God intends for you to hear those lyrics at that moment. Everything is reflective of God, because God controls everything. Once we know that, then as we go through our humdrum daily routine, we are constantly reminded of God, and we constantly see that he's in charge of everything that happens. He is with us every single moment of the day. It reminds us that there is a God and that all of life is saturated with holiness. It's a very important lesson, and it brings us closer to God every single day, and that's what it's all about. Have a great day, my friends. Be well.